call this meeting of the Oceanside City Council to order. And if you would please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If we could have a roll call, please. Here.
Deputy Mayor Feller.
Here.
Councilmember Khan. Here. Councilmember Rodriguez.
Here.
Councilmember Sanchez.
Here.
This time, if I could invite our Humane Society representative with a pet that's going home with Audrey.
Thank you so much. I brought with me today Beautiful. She's the pet of the month. She is about 5 years old. Beautiful.
Look at the way she stands.
I think she's a little nervous about this setting. Usually she's very friendly with people. She does well with children. She has been in and out of our care since 2016. To no fault of her own, just owner not being able to provide a consistent, stable home for her. So she's been in and out. She is available for adoption. She should be the only pet in the home. She doesn't do well with cats. She does okay with dogs, but I think she would be the best to be the only dog in the home. She is pretty special. Hey. Good girl. Good. And you can see she's trained. Beautiful. Good girl. She is available for adoption. Let me tell you where, 2905 San Luis Rey Road. And we are open 7 days a week from 10 to 6 every day. Good girl. Yeah, she's very well trained. She's very special. She does have some waivers we want people to know about. She was adopted once, and they had a wood fence, and unfortunately, she likes to chew on the wood fence, so needs to have a sturdy yard. Yeah, she just kind of decided that she would chew on the fence and pull a board off, and so that didn't work out for her. So she needs just a really consistent home with a family that's going to continue her training and just give her that stable home for the rest of her life. That would be really important for her. She also comes with our trainer will sit and talk with potential adopters and give you the training tools to be successful with her and help her be successful in your home. And she also gets a free post-adoption consultation where the trainer will spend about an hour with her adopters and just kind of reinforce some of the training tools and how to make her successful so she can be in a forever home. That's really all I have. I don't have any new things or events to report at this time. Just wanted to bring Beautiful and give her a little bit of exposure that she so richly deserves. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And she's an LSU fan. So he just put his hand up. He'll take her. So I know it's not on the agenda, but we're going to have a presentation by County Public Health Nursing Manager Audrey Lopez on the current coronavirus situation.
Hi everyone, I'm glad I could come and give you an update on the coronavirus, and I hope you find it helpful.
If you talk into the microphone.
I hope you find this helpful, and if you have any questions, I'll try to answer them for you. If I don't have the answer, I'll take it back and hopefully get the answer for you that way.
Okay, next.
Okay. The novel coronavirus situation is rapidly changing. The information provided in today's presentation is accurate of March 3rd, and I did go online and see if there was any additional information that I could update for you all. The coronavirus, COVID-19, is a type of common virus that can infect your nose, sinuses, or upper throat, And it's named the coronavirus because of the crown-like spikes on the surface of the virus, and that's how it kind of attaches when you inhale it in. Common coronavirus usually causes a mild to moderate symptoms, much like the common cold. And what you're likely to experience in terms of an illness is runny nose, a headache, cough, sore throat, and fever, and just not feeling very well. And at some point, everyone usually has some type of coronavirus illness. The person-to-person spread is believed to be the main way that the COVID-19 virus is spreading, and this is between people who are in close contact with one another, and that's about 6 feet. And it's spread through respiratory droplets, a person sneezing or coughing, and so it's spread kind of like the flu and other respiratory illnesses. The virus seems to be spreading easily, and right now it seems to be very sustainable in the communities that are affected with the virus. People are thought to be the most contagious when they are the sickest. You can also pick up the virus on objects, and it's possible that touching a surface and then touching your face, your nose, or your eyes, you can transfer the virus that way. Investigations are ongoing to learn how easily it is transmitted and the severity of the virus. Illness in people affected with the virus range from people being just mildly sick to being severely ill and dying. And what medical measures we can use is mainly to keep people comfortable if they do get the virus, and do supportive-like things for them. So again, some of the symptoms of this virus is the fever, the cough, and difficulty breathing. At this time, there seems to be a 14-day period in terms of when you can contract the virus, and then you need to monitor. And the 14 days is from the time that you have the last contact with someone that's known to have the virus. And this information is based on what we previously know about the MERS virus, because they're all in that cluster of the coronaviruses. And the way that it is diagnosed is that we do a testing of the nasal respiratory system, and then we do a confirmatory test through CDC. So our local labs, in which now we have 18 or 19 commercial labs that can also test for this virus in addition to the public health lab. And again, the way that it is treated is that we provide supportive care for people that actually have symptoms, and also to support vital organs for people that are actually seriously sick with the virus. Based on the current information, people who meet the following criteria should contact the health department or their healthcare provider. If you have traveled in an area affected by the coronavirus within the last 14 days, or had close contact with a person confirmed to have COVID-19, and develop a fever and symptoms of respiratory illness such as a cough or shortness of breath. The health risk for COVID-19 to the general American public may change over time as the situation unfolds, and it's based on exposure that can vary based on the community that you're in when you have contact with the virus. There is currently no vaccine available for the coronavirus, the COVID-19. It is recommended for everyone to get the flu vaccine. Has everyone here had the flu vaccine? Okay, good show of hands. They're really recommending that everyone also have the flu vaccine. We're also strongly recommending that washing your hands is your best defense with this virus. And that's washing your hands with soap and water for at least 20 minutes. And
Seconds.
20 minutes is
20 minutes.
20 seconds, I'm sorry. You don't want to watch for 20 minutes. 20 seconds.
We're awake.
And 20 seconds is saying happy birthday to yourself 2 times. And if you're not around water and soap, then you can use an alcohol-based hand sanitizer. And if you have to do that, I strongly recommend that as soon as you can to actually wash your hands with soap and water. So the sanitizers is kind of like a backup until you can actually wash your hands with soap and water. They're also recommending that people avoid touching their eyes, nose, and mouth, and especially when you have unwashed hands, and that's pretty hard to do because we constantly are touching our faces. Avoiding close contact with people who are sick, and staying home yourself and away from people if you are sick. And when you cough or sneeze, you need to cover and use a tissue to cover and then throw the tissue away. Cleaning and disinfecting frequently is also a good idea. We're not recommending the face mask because face masks are used for people that are sick. And if someone is sick, they put on the face mask so they don't spread the germs. For the general public that are not sick, we're not recommending the face mask. In terms of your family and preparing for infection control, suggestions they're saying is the 2 weeks supply of food and water. Talk with your family members in terms of how they would want to be cared for if they were to become sick. You need to also think about child care and plans for child care in case the schools were to start to close. And if you are on medication, have any prescriptions, you want to make sure that you have a supply of your prescriptions at home. And if you can get information electronically of your health records, is what they're recommending that people do. These are some websites that are very good in terms of gaining information, and because this is a situation that's changing on a day-to-day basis, I would recommend that you, on a daily basis, check some of the websites, see what's going on, and if you're planning to travel, they have a real good site for recommendations in terms of travel, and of course, if you don't need to travel, they're recommending that you not travel at all, but these sites are very good. I wanted to just talk a little bit about the quarantine and isolation. And quarantine is what we do for people who are well. We put them in quarantine. Isolation is what we do to separate out sick people who may or may not have the infection from the people who are healthy. Isolation restricts the movement of ill people to help stop the spread of certain diseases, and typically occurs in a hospital setting, but can be done at home as well. And in San Diego, we are monitoring people that are on home isolation. If you have had close contact with someone who has COVID-19 or is being evaluated for infection, you should monitor your health starting from the day that you first had close contact with that person and continue for 14 days after you have had after the close contact with the person. You want to watch for signs and symptoms of getting sick with COVID-19, and that's a fever at 104 or higher, coughing, shortness of breath or difficulty breathing, and other early symptoms that would include things like chills, body aches, and a sore throat, headache, diarrhea, nausea, vomiting, and runny nose. If you develop a fever or any of these symptoms, you need to call your health care provider. If you do not have any of these symptoms, you can continue with your daily activities such as going to work, school, or visiting other public areas. What's new in terms of in terms of identifying the coronavirus? Again, I want to say this is a situation that's changing on a daily basis, and there are a lot of unknowns. This is a new virus, and they're not sure what's going to happen with this virus, so it's kind of like we're just taking this day by day. China was the epicenter for this outbreak, and trying to travel to affected areas with community spread and close contact with persons with COVID-19 have been factors in determining the risk with this particular virus. Again, the main takeaways is wearing a mask is not recommended. Travel to China and other countries with community spreading should be limited to essential reasons for travel. A current risk assessment for the general public can be found at the CDC website. And the County of San Diego is working closely with the local, state, and federal partners to prepare for a response. And I don't know if you know, but the WHO organization did declare a pandemic today. And what's new in terms of San Diego County is we do have the one presumptive positive case that will be confirmed through CDC. Again, there's the websites for resources for you. And that's all I have. Any questions?
I have questions, but I'm not allowed to speak according to the mayor.
You can ask her after she's done. Thank you. Councilmember Sanchez?
Thank you, Nurse Audrey, for being here from the county
Okay.
and giving us this information. I know there's been information on the news, and I believe what the best case scenario is in terms of a vaccine. We're looking at a year and a half.
Yes.
I'm really pleased that we have testing kits. You did indicate you had.
Right. And we actually have 18 or 19 locations now, labs, because what was the challenge before was only the public health had the one lab to test,
Right.
and so that kind of limited the amount of testing we could do. So we're moving along in terms of being able to test the public.
And what I had heard was it's not a question of if, but when. And the best thing we could do is be prepared. And it
Yes.
sounds like that is what the county is doing.
Yes.
And there was a special recommendations for individuals who are over 60 and having some kind of underlying medical condition. Could you explain that?
So what they're doing is it's kind of like social distancing, and they're really, if you're in that category, is to think about what you, in terms of your exposure to the general public, to think about what it is that you need to do and pretty much limit the things that aren't absolutely necessary. Because that seems to be the population that is the most vulnerable at this time.
So, for example, they're suggesting not going on a cruise.
Right. Oh, definitely not a cruise. Definitely not a cruise. And also, they have the other countries that are pretty much in isolation. So you want to pick and choose if you're going to travel. If you need to travel, it's choosing where you go. If you need to do that. And definitely, if you're over 60, you need to think about it very carefully.
You did indicate that there was one positive test in
Yes.
San Diego County,
Yes.
an individual who lives in San Diego County.
Yes, one person.
And
Yes.
that was detected early enough. You did the sequencing, trying to find out if there were any
Right.
other potential communications or
Right.
any kind of touching or anything, and nothing was found, right?
Right. And what I want to say is there's a total of 157 cases in California. So we're really trying to get ahead of this thing and limit the number of cases we have here that are positive.
So if someone does have,
In the absence of corona.
seem to have symptoms, what should they do?
Call their doctor. Don't go. Call your doctor. Tell them what you have, and they'll give you direction from there. And depending on your exposure, if you tell them, and if you've been in contact with someone that is being monitored, if you've just come back from a cruise or traveled in that situation, you need to let them know that as well. So don't just tell them you have symptoms. Give them the history in terms of where you've been and what your exposure may be, and then they make the decision whether or not you can be monitored from your home, which is taking your fever and calling in and checking in, or if they actually need to have you come in.
And if someone doesn't have a doctor, doesn't have health insurance, what are they to do?
Call 211 and they will direct them.
211.
Yes, yes.
Thank you very much.
All righty. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I just want to add that the City of Oceanside, I want to applaud the City of Oceanside, the manager's office for getting a website that's dedicated to the coronavirus. There's a lot of really good information on there. If you go to the City of Oceanside's website, there is a link right on that page that'll take you there. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. And I'd like to thank the council's indulgence for allowing us to go over the 15 minutes. We'll go to our consent calendar, which are items 3 through 16. Do we have any requests to speak on any items?
On item number 12, we have 6 speakers, but they have indicated that they don't wish to speak if they're the only ones. And they don't wish to have the item pulled if they're the only ones.
Move approval for all of them then.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Oh,
We'll go to item 17, which is a general item regarding the adoption of an integrated pest management program and approval of landscape maintenance contracts. Nate the Great.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of City Council, Nathan Mertz, Public Works Division Manager. Tonight before you is a recommendation to adopt an integrated pest management program for parks, beaches, landscape medians, and parkways. Also to approve the Public Works Agreement for parks, beaches, and landscape maintenance services. Spring of 2019, a request for proposal was issued for Parks, Beaches, Landscape Maintenance Services contract. One proposal received on June 5th, 2019. In June 2019, City Council directed staff to develop an integrated pest management program in collaboration with the Parks and Recreation Commission. On October 8, 2019, the Parks and Recreation Commission recommended approval of the integrated pest management program with minor modifications. Staff then revised the maintenance specifications to allow the contractor to adjust their maintenance proposal to be in line with the integrated pest management program. The purpose of the integrated pest management program is to direct health-conscious and environmentally sensitive pest management strategies on city-owned parks, beaches, improved landscape medians, parkways, and city-owned buildings. It requires city staff and its contractors to focus on the prevention and suppression of pest issues with the least impact on human health, the environment, and non-target organisms. It also outlines how city departments are to perform pest management and to ensure compliance with the city's integrated pest management program. Policy and goals of the integrated pest management program are to protect health, human health, and non-target organisms, actively monitor the presence of pests, apply a tiered approach to pest management, educate staff on pesticide application best management practices, effectively communicate the usage of pesticide through signs, notices, website, and prepare annual reports. If chemical pesticides are used, use EPA-level pesticides in a targeted manner to protect public safety and to prevent threat to native habitats. The IPM uses a tiered approach to pest management. Tier 1 involves cultural, mechanical, environmental, and biological control measures. Tier 2 involves pesticide controls, which is the least preferred option. Pesticides are considered a secondary resort within the city's parks, beaches, and landscape parkways. If pesticides are used, they are to be the least toxic pesticides, meaning they can't be or cannot be known or probable carcinogens, reproductive toxicants, known or probable endocrine disruptors, They need to have a soil half-life of less than 30 days and need to be non-toxic to fish, birds, bees, etc. The annual contract for parks and beaches is for the maintenance of 45 parks and city facilities, including Civic Center and the City Operations Center. Major scope of work for the contract involves mowing, trimming, cleaning of courts and amenities, trash and debris removal. It's a 2-year public works agreement with 3 one-year options. To be in compliance with the Integrated Pest Management Program criteria and to forego the use of chemical pesticides, additional labor is required in the form of a weed detail crew. Staff has developed 3 options for City Council consideration. Option 1 is adopt the IPM and implement the Integrated Pest Management Program with year-round increased maintenance for a total of $556,000 a year, which is about a $250,000 increase year to year. Benefits of the full implementation includes the elimination of chemical pesticides within turf and planter areas, and thus resulting in a healthy turf and planter area conditions. Option 2 is adopt an integrated pest management program and implement the integrated pest management program with 6 months increased maintenance for a total of $430,000 annually. It's about a $125,000 year-to-year increase. Partial IPM implementation includes seasonal weed control, intermittent or seasonal presence of weeds within turf and planter areas. Option 3 is to adopt and implement the IPM with a 3-month increased maintenance mode, which is $368,000 a year, about $62,000 increase year to year. Partial implementation includes limited seasonal weed control and increased seasonal presence of weeds. With that, staff recommends City Council adopt the Integrated Pest Management Program for parks, beaches, and landscape medians and parkways, and to receive direction from City Council on Parks and Beaches Maintenance Agreement option and approve the Public Works Agreement with a corresponding service level.
Thank you.
Concludes my
Do we have any
discussion.
speakers?
We have 11 speakers on this item. And our first speaker is Marianne Viney, to be followed by Bob Johnson, to be followed by Christine Gorman. As I call your name, please make your way to one of the podiums. Please speak directly into the microphone, and the lights will indicate how much time you have.
Thank you. Good evening, esteemed mayor and council members. My name is Marianne Viney, and I'm here representing Non-Toxic Neighborhoods. Thanks for the opportunity to speak tonight and for all you do for the residents of Oceanside. We support the proposed Organics First IPM Option 1, which is the most cost-effective long-term and is also the most proactive health stance because it restricts the use of all synthetic or chemical pesticides rather than playing whack-a-mole with individual pesticides and banning those because they only come back again later with a slightly different chemical formula that then, can have the same effects or worse. And that, that goes for all classifications of chemicals, including like orthophosphates, orthochlorines, carbamates, pyrethroids, neonicotinoids, and et cetera. So that is the advice of non-toxic Carl's neighborhoods, and that's what looks like is coming through here in this IPM. So non-toxic neighborhoods' goal is to protect children from pesticides where they play and learn. We are happy for the opportunity that we have had to meet with staff, with residents, and also with you, and to have shared our scientific advisors, playbook, our IPM, our organic products, and technology information. We've worked with New York State Senator Hoyneman on state legislation restricting synthetic pesticide chemical use there, and obviously we wanted to bring that to California, so we're very excited to say that we are now working with Assemblymember Bloom of Santa Monica to restrict synthetic pesticide use in California's state public open spaces and also in schools. So this is a beautiful opportunity for Oceanside to get out in front of this. So thankfully, Farmers Footprint and Non-Toxic Neighborhoods have, for the last 4 years, been qualifying organic products and their efficacy, new technology, glyphosate, organic alternatives that get the job done. So I really appreciate everything that you do. I hope that you go for option one. I think the IPM is really good. And I just want to leave you with two thoughts. One is that we are really happy to offer the City of Oceanside our grant for an organics park program. And also leave you with a quote from Dr. Lanfear, who also sent all of you a letter through email. And the quote is, quote, "By allowing children to be exposed to toxins or chemicals of unknown toxicity, we are unwittingly using our children in a massive experiment," unquote. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Bob Johnson. I'm associated with Farmers Footprints. They're out of Encinitas, and Non-Toxic Neighborhoods, which is out of Irvine. First of all, I'd like to congratulate staff for putting together this IPM. We've worked with communities throughout the United States. Actually, we're working with the City of San Diego right now and San Diego Unified School District. We've worked with Carlsbad, many cities in Orange County and school districts, et cetera. A couple of comments. First of all, I think it's a very good IPM. Certainly, we recommend option one. Secondly, it's clear in the staff report that it affects all departments in the city. The key on this is that since Public Works is in charge of the IPM, they operate the IPM, that they're looking out for all of your landscape facilities, and so it's really important that there'd be a citywide effort, and that's just not in one department. So I'm assuming that that's what you're doing. The third item I'd like to point out is that in your beginning of your tier 2, that you use certified organic products applications, and so the certifications are through OMRI and through Washington State. They have a Washington State organic program, and those two have the certified products that they be used before you use any synthetics and any other products as you, if there's a need to do that beyond the mechanical. With that, I'd like to again thank you for consideration of this, and again congratulate your department.
Christine Gorman, to be followed by Diane Wolke, to be followed by Aaron Kinsberg, to be followed by John Bottorff.
Good evening, and thank you very much. I spoke with, I think, every one of you more than a year ago, and I'm so thankful that you listened and you referred this to staff and said that you wanted to hear what Parks and Rec had to say about it, and all that's been done. I think they've done really good research and come up with a really good IPM, and now it's just time to put the finishing touches and put your final stamp of yes on it. I'm really excited to think of what this is going to mean for the PR for our city. I could just see now in a Chamber of Commerce magazine come out with a full center spread with great photos of what Oceanside is doing. And you know, right now, you know that everything is going green, and we don't want greenwashing, we want truly green. And this is the real thing. It's your chance to do something great for the city, you know, to go down in history as somebody who has, you know, left the city a better place, and to do something good for your children, your grandchildren, and even for the workers. These workers now won't be spraying pesticides. They'll be going out and hand-pulling weeds. When they go home and they want to hug their family and their children, they don't have to worry about pesticides on their clothing, getting onto their children, tracking onto their carpets. We don't have to worry about our pets, you know, getting exposed to toxic materials. This will be fantastic for our city. And now it's up to you to put the final stamp on it. And I'm hoping you'll go for option one, because that's really doing it the right way, where you're going to really see the results. So I'm counting on you. And again, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. I'm Diane Wolke, retired nurse midwife and public health nurse, and I live here in Oceanside. I agree with all of the prior speakers. I really support option 1. It's a small price to pay for the safety of our community as well as our environment and to protect our children in particular who are the most vulnerable. It's important to ban these pesticides that are particularly carcinogenic or toxic to reproduction of non-target species, you and I, as well as pets, livestock, wild, and aquatic life. These pesticides are already finding its way into our drinking water and our food. The fish that you eat tonight may have some of these in them. In particular, neonicotinoids are implicated in the decreasing pollinators around the world. Pollinators include bees, bats, beetles, birds. They're responsible for 75% of our world's food supply and quality. And the EPA states that there is no added benefit to use of neonicotinoids. 0 added benefit. They are also implicated in a lot of human health issues as well. In addition, neonicotinoids is the #1 class of pesticides used in this country. Acetaminoprid is actually the #2 chemical that is most commonly used in the U.S. It's been on the Cal EPA list of carcinogens or reproductive toxic chemicals since 1990. It doesn't make any sense not to include this in a ban. The neonicotinoids have been banned in France completely since 2018, and in the EU, a ban of 3 of them will go into effect next month. Atrazine is banned in 37 countries currently, and it's the second most commonly used pesticide in the U.S. It's implicated in reproductive effects as well, including prematurity, low birth weight, very low birth weight, fetal growth restriction, limb reduction, brain development, abdominal wall defects, and breast cancer. Please go with option 1. It's the only thing that makes sense for the health of our community and our planet. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Aaron Kinberg. I'd just like to support option 1 and give you a little quick, short and sweet statement. But essentially, as just kind of going back to the IPM report, PowerPoint, just something I picked off it was how glyphosate was deemed as no known harms or carcinogenic agents. But why should we make our decision off of something that might not have carcinogenic agents? We should wait till there's something we can see confirmation that there is no harmful effects. Not to mention that pesticides do lead to soil. Excuse me? Okay. Pesticides lead to soil degeneration, and I believe that there are other options that we can use. For the past 6 months, I was interning for an organic farm, 2 organic farms, one large scale and one small scale. And we tried not to use, or we use no pesticides, and instead we use alternate methods such as like farmscaping, which is using like different types of plants or water reservoirs to detour pests, which actually keeps the ecosystem of that farm healthy because it keeps these pests that are contributing to the ecosystem but not affecting what you're growing. Yeah, please go with option 1. Thank you so much for your time.
Good evening. My name is John Butter with Clean Earth for Kids. I want to thank you all for considering the IPM. I urge you all to go with option 1. It's definitely the right thing to do to protect our kids. I would ask 2 things to be added to the IPM. 1, extend the IPM to not just city-managed land, but also land leased from the city. So incorporate the requirements for the IPM into that land lease. And the other thing I would ask is that in the IPM, it says that pesticides can be approved by the maintenance supervisor or division manager for their area. I would ask that would actually be moved up to the director of public works or the city manager, that in doing so that they vouch for and document the fact that all other attempts through mechanical and environmental controls have been tried and that this is the last possible way of doing it. And along with that, looking through the staff report, weeds are definitely the number one pest in Oceanside, and using pesticides, it talks about budgetary loss or protecting buildings. I'm at a loss to think about how weeds are going to damage a building. So I would really expect that pesticide use would be not used for weeds. There's really no reason other than a state requirement for a compliance requirement to use pesticides. So I definitely urge that to be stronger language in the IPM, and please vote yes on option 1. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Darren Marlowe, to be followed by Suzanne Hume, to be followed by Linda Evenoff.
Hey. Hi, my name is Darren. I'm a high school senior, and I'm here with Clean Earth for Kids. I'm here to urge you to choose option 1, which uses the least amount of pesticides. Although this comes at an extra cost, it would significantly improve public health and protect kids and future generations from both short-term and long-term health issues. For example, the pesticide 2,4-D, which is currently used in Buchanan Park, can cause coughing, burning, dizziness, and temporary loss of muscle coordination with prolonged oral exposure. Even worse is glyphosate, which is associated with a wide array of health issues, including liver damage and endocrine disruption. While it was mentioned that glyphosate does not contain proven carcinogens, I'd like to point out that the World Health Organization asserts that glyphosate is carcinogenic, and the EPA, who disagrees, has ties with CropLife within its advisory panel. They are the parent company of Monsanto, who created Roundup using glyphosate. The City Council was willing to spend millions on synthetic turf, so I don't think it's much to ask for more money to ensure the health and safety of Oceanside residents. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Suzanne Hume. I am the founder and educational director of CleanEarthForKids.org, a nonprofit working to protect children's health, clean air, clean water, and non-toxic lands. So I'm here today to support option 1. Absolutely. I agree with what John from Clean Earth for Kids has said, that the oversight in escalating to pesticides, the language there must be changed. It can't just be decided by someone doing, an area supervisor that says that it is deemed necessary. That must change because, as it's stated in the IPM, that the number one problem or number one pest in Oceanside is weeds. So I would like to know what constitutes an emergency that puts people at risk. So I myself have been a victim of pesticide poisoning here in Oceanside, California. And as a result of that, thankfully, we met with the County Board of Supervisors and passed a ban on glyphosate last week, and we're working together on a ban or to ban other additional toxic pesticides and working to have a really tight IPM. This is coming. People want it. So this weekend I spent with Darren and other fabulous people for Clean Earth for Kids and lots of kids. And we were in Buchanan Park, as Darren said, where 2,4-D is currently used. 2,4-D would not be eliminated as per this IPM. 2,4-D has been implicated in lots of things that you can research and we can talk for days about, including as the water piles, and if dogs are drinking that water, they can have liver failure. Anyway, so as I said, in Buchanan Park, 2,4-D is used. It's a type 3 pesticide classified by the EPA. We know that the EPA does not use the precautionary principle. They don't. And there's a lot of questions about the reasons why things are not ramped up and bumped up to be listed as more problematic when we have lots of the scientists saying that they should be. So we're hopeful that there is a stakeholder committee. There was once a stakeholder committee that was dissolved because I guess through Parks and Rec, the director said we didn't have a second. But there were people meeting and talking about what we should do. We are so appreciative of the staff, and you guys have done just an amazing job, and thank you so much to all of you who are considering this important thing. I agree with what Darren said, especially when city council members are recommending a $14 million synthetic turf cost for 2 parks, Buchanan Park and MLK, be put in at a cost to us that we absolutely disagree with. There's no way that we can overlook spending, a couple $1,000s on option 1. Thank you.
Linda Ivanov?
I'm Linda Ivanoff. I'm with Sage Environmental Group. We are environmental planners and landscape contractors. I live here in Oceanside. I want to support the IPM plan number 1, and I believe that we should have, a balanced, scientific-driven policy that's not based on fear of certain chemicals, but how it's approached pragmatically. Our company specializes in restoration ecology, so we have soil scientists and plant specialists. We also have an herbicide applicator license, so we do use that at some points. We found we have now integrated into our program mowing, and we have a new crew of adorable goats that eat the weeds like crazy. So we have been working with Irvine Ranch Conservancy up in Orange County and have put together a data-driven and data collection case study on restoring some land that was degraded with cattle. So that the idea is to get rid of the invasive weeds, and it brings back the good ecology of the property, gets rid of all the mustard on the hill, et cetera. So that soil scientist and our environmental planner presented this case study at the Cal Invasive Plant Council meeting last fall, which documents multiple years of, and with photos and data, the mowing versus the grazing, and how mowing you're doing over and over again, and the grazing is actually helping to regenerate the desired plants and the balance in the soil. So we're looking at that as a very positive. The other is that the animals eat the biomass and take it away, so you're not laying down weed seeds again over and over again and having 4 episodes or more of each season of mowing. So we find that's a really good benefit. We also have been working with Irvine, implementing areas in their open space, fire prevention, defensible space. And just last week, the mayor of Irvine was the first in the nation to promote and implement the non-toxic policy. And she was just given, the city was just given an award by the Cal EPA last week for the IPM policy that they implemented. And she included that last week in her State of the City address. It's incorporated to the green initiatives. So the grazing has become a really great program for Irvine. We're now implementing it in Laguna Niguel together with mowing and grazing. And it's great for like hilly and slopey areas that are more dangerous to the labor workers. So I appreciate your time, and
thank you.
I support option 1.
That concludes our speakers.
Councilmember Sanchez.
Thank you, and I want to thank staff for working with the public for, I think it was over a year, and working with the city council members and also with the Parks and Rec Commission to come up with a strategy that would avoid pesticides and at least avoid chemical pesticides and allow for more organic maintenance of our parks and other landscaping. So I did want to ask a question about that reference to approval. That was, I believe, page 6 of the IPM, proposed IPM, and that's under approval and application of chemical pesticides. Number 1, where it says pesticides shall be approved by the maintenance supervisor and or division manager. Why not just the division manager?
That decision was made to be most flexible. The supervisors are the usual day-to-day managers of these contracts and have the qualifications or the certifications related to pesticides in this case, and would be qualified to make that decision. And this is again just a draft document.
Qualification. So could we have both of there so that, I think the idea is to track it. I think that in order to be able to know, because you have a reporting portion in here, which is really good, because I think there was also an issue about how do you get to these reports, what's going on at this, X park, whatever. Would it be able to be and? Because it sounds like the reason why you wanted the maintenance supervisors because they're more qualified to make that decision?
Than just, Councilmember Sanchez, sorry. Other than just the decision to make it more flexible for staff to continue with work, but in this particular case, everybody would be involved in this decision because it's not a decision we'd make lightly, because pretty much the only time we would be utilizing chemical pesticides when there would be some sort of issue with public safety or structural issues with a building, and I'm not just talking about weeds, I'm talking about pests like termites or, flood control purposes, items such as that. So
right.
We wanted just the most flexibility, and we're willing to modify this however council desires.
Okay. And you are going to be reporting on a yearly basis. When such a decision is made, how quickly would you be able to report that out, for example? And what would be the manner in the way that would be reported out?
So the Honorable Mayor, Councilmember Sanchez, the way the IPM has been structured is that, there's within the first year, there's a 6-month report provided, and the 6-month report basically goes over what happened during that period, what was used, what issues we saw within our facilities, and that's presented. After that, then we go to
the Parks and Rec
annual.
Commission.
Yeah, so, and you wouldn't necessarily know that anything's happening other than if you were visiting the site or visiting the city's website to notice that there was a pesticide application in process, or the actual site where we would sign for the actual process. And then at the annual report, we would disclose what was used within any facilities in the park. And this is in line with what Irvine does and Carlsbad does and other cities in the area.
Is there any way to report it out concurrently at the time that kind of a decision is made? Is there someone that would be in charge, who's ever in charge, be it the division manager or the maintenance supervisor? How would that become public?
By posting it on the website and at the facility with signage in terms of a closure of that area, or notifying, users that there was that process taking place and what was going on there. So that would be the essential notification.
The website how would you find that?
That would be located in the Public Works page of the website, and then we would have a notification and then essentially on our main page of the Public Works website. Yeah.
Okay. So it's something that someone could easily find?
Yes.
Okay. Well, as I said, I'm really, really excited that this is before us. I would like to move to option 1. It is an additional $250,000. I think that we have been, we've had public members very anxious about this and their kids, and we had a lot of testimony before from the community, including our kids, and this is something especially important since we do have 45 parks, and this is such an important part of what we do in terms of our public health. So I'm going to move that we go forward with option 1. Thank you.
Councilmember Rodriguez. Quick question. Who currently services the entire city of Oceanside's landscaping and maintenance program now?
Company Executive Landscape of Fallbrook.
And when did that new contract begin, and when does that end?
The contract ended last year in October, and we've been on a month-to-month basis.
Got it.
So
we're currently on a month-to-month?
Yeah, currently month-to-month.
When the RFP was sent out, was it just on this pest management, or was it on all services within our city?
The RFP was prepared with kind of two functions. One was the historic way of maintaining city parks, and within the RFP there was an additive alternate for an environmentally sensitive strategy, maintenance strategy, in which the contractors were to prepare their own kind of maintenance strategy in line with a future IPM, because we had not developed the IPM yet.
So they developed, in essence, what's before us today, is that correct?
It was a lot, well, the one proposal that we had, the company has had no experience with running an organic or non-toxic program. I was a little concerned about that and the lack of scope. And the intent was to bolster that and work with them just to make sure the scope of work was crystal clear on what was going to be required. After that, we had direction to basically develop the IPM, which created a much better scope of work for the contractor to follow, and they understood what they do and understanding what they were required to do, and working with them, understanding what the community wanted with the integrated pest management program. And basically the whole goal is to, forego or eliminate the use of chemical pesticides within our facilities. And the main way you do that is with mechanical means, and you can couple that with other like cultural approaches. So on the tier 1 methods, it's best to couple a couple methods together to achieve the results.
Mm-hmm. So you answered my next question, which was, does this vendor do this service with any other jurisdiction? And the answer is obviously no, if they weren't able to put together a viable bid on services they've never performed before, but that we in essence created and retrofitted a program that we're telling them we want done. They're putting a number together that they don't know will suffice or not suffice. I know personally, in running and operating a farm, when you go from pesticides to pulling out weeds, the manual labor is 3 to 5-fold, the amount of time and energy. And so I'm really concerned with that, and taking on this endeavor and this $500,000, total cost, $250,000 additional cost on option 1, when this is something that a city like Irvine can afford, a city like Laguna Niguel can afford, the city of Oceanside. I would love us to be able to afford an option like this, but I just don't think feasibly we're in a position as a city to spend taxpayer dollars and take from our infrastructure fund when we have roads that need to get repaired, parks that need to get repaired, just a plethora of things that need to get done. So I do not support any of these options. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Feller.
Pardon me. So the increase changes us from using pesticides to pulling weeds by hand, essentially?
Honorable Mayor, Deputy Mayor Feller, that's correct.
What eliminates gophers, ground squirrels? They're a pest, I believe.
Honorable Mayor, Deputy Mayor Feller, that's correct. You'd be basically trapping, the goal of the IPM is trapping of those pests.
Trapping,
which includes live trapping as well.
I'm sorry, now what does that mean? It includes live trapping, or it must be live trapping?
It includes, it's an option for us to use.
Okay. I've walked several fields, Capistrano, North River Road, or Melba Bishop, the baseball fields. There's problems at Sepulveda. There's problems out at Landis. And that's probably more of a danger in my eyes to our children than I think that's the major danger out there. and that it comes with, twisted ankles, torn knees. Those things happen all the time. And it's all the fields. Over on Martin Luther King School grounds, the outfield there is not, we use it, but it's not ours to mow. I'm a little concerned that we're spending this extra $250,000 on, or whatever the number was, on the, so that we can pull weeds. So I'm going to listen to whatever anybody else has to say, but I'm not sure what I'm going to do at this point.
Councilmember Keim?
Nathan, just a couple quick questions. I think I'm concerned about the price. And number one, I think we all want, pesticide-free fields, but 500 or 500,000, 250 for a year for 2 years is a lot to take on right now. For me, it'd just be we have to tolerate more weeds if we go to any of these options and just see how that goes. But I'd like a shorter contract, so if it's something that's not working, we can redo it instead of being stuck for 2 years. I mean, just today on Monday we had an interesting day financially where a lot of our bonds were called back, and our returns are going to be quite a bit less. And depending on what happens in the next few months with TOT tax and tourism, we could have a rough year. We might not, but I'm not comfortable with $250,000 a year for weeds. I think if we go to option 3, it has the 3-month crew, correct? Can we spread that 3-month crew out throughout the year just to focus on hotspots with more visibility or that are impacted more? Or do we have to have it a certain, are they going to be March through June, or do they have to do it a week period? I mean, can we do, 2 days here, 3 days there? How could that work?
Honorable Mayor, Councilmember Keim, yeah, we are in full control over this contract with this weed crew. We can direct them to be at any location during any period. Essentially, the way we're viewing this weed crew in the allotted amount of time is an allowance for us to utilize them how we want and attend to. So, when we have only a 3-month allowance with 4 crew staff, we'll have to be very strategic on kind of what we get after, and it will definitely be seasonally based when weeds are at their most prevalent time, and then because there's a couple seasons for weeds during the year. So
and how well do you think we can manage the weed problem with the 3-month option? Do you have concerns with that?
Well, if we went that route, I would definitely do this as kind of an experiment of sorts in which we would report back on. I mean, remember, with any contract that we have, we can always amend the contract. We can amend the scope of work. We can amend the price. So if we chose a lower option, we can all work together and review and how that option's working for the city. And then if it's not working well, we could come up with a different strategy.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think we don't have the resources of Irvine or Laguna Niguel, but if we do a lower option, we can see how that works with the weeds. If we're in a good financial position 6 months or a year from now, we can afford more, we can do that. But I think I'm not comfortable with $250,000 a year for weeds right now.
Thank you. Councilmember Sanchez made a motion and there wasn't a second, so that motion dies for lack of a second. I have no real issue with the IPM. My concern is adding a $250,000 cost to the general fund at this time. We have a potential $1 million loss of revenues as related to us by the Treasurer's Office in regards to the bonds that Councilmember Keim just commented on. Adding this to that potential loss eliminates our entire surplus that was projected for this year. My concern is that we're prioritizing this over any other pending budget priority. We're essentially trading 2 police officers or resource centers or you name it for a pest management strategy. I would rather see the costs and the IPM come back to us as part of the budget process so we can compare and prioritize, is this a priority or are there other issues that we recognize are going to come forward as part of the budget process? So I'm going to make a motion that we approve a contract for the base contract, which is what we have today, and have the IPM and these costs come back to us as part of the budget process.
Can I add to that? I think all of us on the dais want to move in the direction of option 1. I want to make that clear. I think that's very important. I think that's the route we want our city to go, but we have to have the resources or the grant funds to be able to cover those additional costs. There's other priorities. What I would like to potentially just suggest, it doesn't need to be a part of the motion, is, there's public areas that are more at risk toward these pesticides with children and families, on fields, for example. So maybe some of these areas can just focus on no pesticides on, more vulnerable areas. But again, I want to second Mayor Peter Weiss's motion on coming back to us with a plan. We just want to make sure we can afford this. All of us want to move in the direction of option 1. We can't afford it at this time. And we're responsible to you as taxpayers to prioritize, public safety and on from there.
Councilmember Sanchez.
Thank you. This is a high priority for the city. These are chemicals that are making our kids and our families sick. These are chemicals that cause cancer. And I don't want to wait for the state to tell us what we already know. And that is, we have this responsibility to our children, to our families, that use these fields every day, 45 fields. This is a cost for maintaining the health of our children. And it is a high priority to me. So option 1, I wanted to make sure is what I believe we ought to do. Option 3 is really what make our kids sick a little bit versus, more. That doesn't make sense to me. So I do not want to wait until the budget time. This is something that time is of the essence. It's a ticking bomb for some of these kids.
There is a motion and a second.
We still have lights on. Go ahead, Esther.
I think I still get 10 minutes.
You're down to 2:45.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I believe that this is not the end of this, that come November, we will be able to look at this again. I think that there are so many people that are not here that this matters to, and their families and the kids, and we are the ones who are supposed to be making these decisions. This is a high priority. So I'm very disappointed with my colleagues here on the dais. This is not, we spend so much money on other things that are not health related. We just spent money on an election that we didn't have to do for Measure K. We waste so much money. We wasted money on the extension of on the Melrose extension. I think that was in the order of $90,000. So every day we have these inequities here at the dais, and this is something that we all ought to be able to hold hands and say, this is important to the health of our children. We ought to be saying yes. Thank you.
I would just like to say that we have a budget workshop in just a little over a month, so we've waited a year to get this point. I think another month isn't going to make a difference. Councilmember Keim?
I heard a lot of hyperbole. Option 3 is not make our children a little less sick. It's just looking at more weeds. And that's what it really comes down to. So it's disappointing to hear that and point out that some of your colleagues don't care. That's not accurate. I have a 7-year-old daughter. I care very much. Mr. Mertz, do we use Roundup in our fields, our grass and turf right now?
We've stopped using Roundup back in 2018. At the end of 2018, we would never use Roundup within turf areas because you wouldn't have turf areas anymore. It'd kill everything. So Roundup was only used in planter areas as kind of a spot treatment.
Okay.
Deputy Mayor Fell, and just to clarify, the motion is to approve the IPM. It's just not funding the contract at that point. So Deputy Mayor Feller?
I probably have more at stake because we spend more time in the parks than any normal family at all. I think, as it's been declared and stated already, that we are already not using pesticides, potentially dangerous pesticides on the grass. But we're not doing anything about the real pests that are destroying our fields, and those are the gophers and the ground squirrels and the Muni golf course. They're everywhere, and we're responsible for all those areas, and we can't do anything other than trap them live. Really.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Please vote. Okay, hold on, Mr. Mullen.
So just for clarity of the record, so the motion is to approve the IPM and to approve the base contract amount in the amount, and you said base contract amount, Mr. Mayor, and I believe, Mr. Mertz, that's $305,000 for the fiscal year or calendar year?
Be a full calendar year, essentially.
Okay, so $305,000.
And the additional costs would come back to us as part of the budget process.
We'll bring them back.
Please vote.
I'd like to let the record reflect that I vote yes for adoption of the IPM and no on the continuance.
Motion approved, 4-0, with noted Councilmember Sanchez's votes.
Okay, with that, we'll go to item 18, our first public hearing item, which is adoption of a resolution approving a regular coastal permit for 504 South Pacific Street. And we'll open the public hearing and start with disclosures.
Only had staff and been by the site.
Only staff. Staff only.
I've driven by that site many, many times.
Staff.
Tiffany, you ready? Don't laugh.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor Weiss and City Council members. My name is Tiffany Chen, and I'm a planner with the Development Services Department. I'm here to present Agenda Item 18 regarding a proposed single-family residence at 504 South Pacific Street, known as the Blakely Residence. Staff recommends that the Community Development Commission adopt a resolution to approve a regular coastal permit to allow the demolition of an existing single-family residence and the construction of a new 3-story single-family residence with an attached accessory dwelling unit. The 3,333 square foot lot is located in the Townsite Neighborhood Planning Area in the downtown subdistrict 5A. Which is meant for medium-density residential, though single-family residential is also permitted. It is surrounded by a mix of single and multifamily residential development. An 856 square foot, 2-story single-family residence built in the 1930s currently sits at the rear of the property near the alley. It has been vacant for the past couple of years and has not been deemed historically significant. During January of last year, the Downtown Advisory Committee considered a previous version of the project, which included a request for a conditional use permit to exceed the maximum ceiling height of 27 feet. The Downtown Advisory Commission was not supportive of exceeding the max ceiling height and also requested increased landscaping and more facade articulation. Since the meeting, the applicant has worked with city staff to revise the scope of the project to no longer exceed the maximum ceiling height, thus no longer requiring the conditional use permit. There's also now increased landscaping and improved architectural features, such as additional facade materials. Here's the site plan showing the building's footprint on the lot. Landscape areas are called out in green. The outdoor patio does count towards the landscape area. Here's some renderings of the residence looking towards the south on Pacific Street. There are 2 decks facing the street as well as a rooftop deck. Here's a straight-on view as well as a view looking towards the north. The proposed scope of work is permitted in the D5A district. Inclusion of the ADU would provide an additional dwelling unit over what is currently existing. Per ADU regulation, short-term rental of both the main dwelling unit and the ADU would not be permitted with the establishment of the ADU. The style of the building is modern, and the design of the building conforms with the downtown residential guidelines in that it provides increased sidewalk presence, includes terraced features, and multiple facade finishes. The structure also meets the residential development standards for downtown. I should mention that the standards table in the staff report incorrectly calls out the parking requirement as a 2-car garage. It's actually a 3-car garage requirement, which the project is providing in a tandem configuration. Staff recommends the Community Development Commission adopt a resolution approving the regular coastal permit, RRP 18-3, to allow the demolition of the existing single-family residence and the construction of a new single-family residence with an attached ADU consisting of 3 stories and a rooftop deck at 504 South Pacific. This concludes my presentation, and I'm available for questions. The applicant is also here. Thank you.
Thank you. This would be the time for the applicant to make a presentation. You have 20 minutes total, including rebuttal, so you can wash your hands for that full 20 minutes.
Hi there, my name is Tree, and I'm the applicant to this design. Oh, yeah, definitely. So do you guys want me to give a speech, or are you answering questions?
Whatever you'd like to do. If you want to make a presentation, that's fine. If not, if you're comfortable with Tiffany's, that's fine too.
Okay. Well, this structure up here, believe it or not, is a product of function. I kind of created this thing through a process of answering questions, gathering information, researching limitations and restrictions, formulating variables, and pretty much putting all these variables together to create something that was functional and pretty much artistic as well. So before I started this project, I had a series of questions. How can I create a product that is functional? Well, how can I create a product that would take advantage of the site, takes advantage of the view, the climate, the coastal environment? How do I create a product that will fit into the existing urban fabrics? And how would I create a product that will align with the visions of the future of Oceanside? With these questions, I pretty much looked at 3 areas of investigations, and they're all site-specific. First being site, the physical sites. Second being the local context. Third, local planning jurisdictions. Starting with 1, site, the physicality of it. It's being on the coast. I have a 180-degree of unobstructed view. So how do I take advantage of that? How do I take advantage of Southern California living, moderate climates? How do I take advantage of the coastal urban fabrics and culture? This structure here, being on the site, is basically an essence of coastal living in a sense. So that raises the question, what is coastal living? I did a lot of research on this kind of stuff, and this is my first beach project in a sense, so I wanted to make sure I wanted to design something that was right, that's fitting. So I investigated what is a beach, what is coastal living, what are some of the attributes, some of the characteristics in it. 1, open floor plans. 2, tons of natural light. 3, outdoor living space. And 4, the use of durable materials. So the second aspect I looked at was local context. What are the existing buildings in the neighborhoods? I wanted to create something that wasn't too out there, that would be fitting for the neighborhood, something that's in line with current and future fabrics of the neighborhood. So I investigated on current and proposed projects as well, and I also investigated in the future city planning and pretty much how urban planning is going to be in the future. And the third aspect that I looked at was basically local planning jurisdiction that pretty much dictated this project. So they had design criteria that I kind of meet to, existing design criteria. And so giving all this information, I had a piece of all this information, and I wanted to create a product that was cohesive in a way, so I needed a theme. What kind of style of architecture would be most appropriate? Looking at all the proposed projects and what's coming, that's going to be the future of Oceanside, I felt that modern might be the most appropriate. Why modern? Because modern gives me the tools, the materials, the methods of constructions in order to put all of these variables to work and be able to create the best products to take advantage of the site, the view, the environments, that it's also fitting to the local context, and it allows me to create a product that will sustain in the future as well. So this structure here is basically a relationship of all of those components put together. And I pretty much felt that I gather up all the information, look at everything, pretty much come up, put all the variables to come together, and pretty much come up with something that is functionable. And this is what I have.
Thank you. If we have questions, we'll ask you afterwards.
Okay.
Thank you. This is a do you have more?
Oh, no.
Okay.
Oh,
thank you. This is a public hearing. Do we have any speakers?
We have one speaker. Our first speaker is Salih Salem.
I'm Sally.
Oh.
I wanted to hear the presentation before I wanted to speak, so I'm going to waive my.
I apologize for mispronouncing your name.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Hearing. Are there any other speakers? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. You're done. Councilmember Rodriguez.
I'd like to make a motion to approve this. I think the product and the curb appeal is beautiful. I think it really sets a standard that neighbors can hopefully attempt to compete with and move us in that direction. So I'm really excited to see this get built and the final product. Thank you. Thank you for doing this in our city.
Deputy Mayor Feller.
Thank you. I will second this. You're probably saving the house that's there from falling down before you can tear it down. So it really makes a difference when people put a lot of thought into what they're developing, and I think you've come up with a real winner here.
Councilmember Sanchez.
Thank you. I saw that the staff report includes reference to review by the DAC, the Downtown Advisory Committee, and they were very concerned about the height, which I guess has been brought down, but also there was reference to bulk and massing of the structure, the architecture, and landscaping. And it looks like the landscaping has been addressed. But do you have something that shows what was the first proposal? Because I do have concerns about the bulk massing, and the architecture was very cubic, and not really characteristic of that's our first main street that goes north and south in a beach community, and it kind of loses its sense of character and place. Do you have anything that shows what it was before?
Councilmember Sanchez, I don't have exhibits that show what it was at DAC. It is shorter than it was when it was presented to DAC. And concerning the facade materials, there is an additional material of the wood siding before it was just completely stucco. The style is basically the same, but
yeah, I think that's what I was wondering, because it is so almost overbearing. The rooftop deck looks like, I mean, the whole thing looks like it towers over everything else, at least from the descriptions and the photographs, not photographs, but the drawings, and or I don't know if they're like simulations, but it does look like it's even taller than the one right next to it, and I don't know. It just seems like you lose your sense of place, and it was denied by the DAC on a 6-1 vote. Is that correct?
Correct.
Did the DAC get to see it again?
No. Yeah, we worked with staff since the DAC meeting to reduce the height, and they also did terrace back the decks that are in the front and increase the landscaping, as you said.
Yeah, it just looks like it's I couldn't tell what that was, and with the better pictures, it looks like that's a person. So the siding, the see-through siding, looks like it's the size of a person on top. What is it, 5 foot, 6 foot?
Councilmember Sanchez, are you referring to the railing, the parapet on top? It's 3.5 feet.
3.5.
The minimum required.
So it's just the angle.
Perhaps.
Yeah, it looks like that's a adult person standing right next to it that's being practically covered by it. Yeah. I think I share the concerns of the DAC here. I think the architecture and the massing. Thank you.
Councilmember Khan.
Just to confirm, why did it not have to go back to the Downtown Advisory Commission? Because they were initially requesting a CUP for the height, correct? So once that was removed, then they didn't, was it necessary to go back in front of it?
Mayor and council members, it's standard practice with the DAC that if they make some, express some concerns, and the staff works with the applicant and then just brings it forward to the CDC if we feel that the applicant has addressed those concerns adequately. So it's standard procedure.
Okay. I do, since initially they want, there was a, more height was requested. We had, last year before council, we tightened up some of our, the stairwells and elevator shafts that were on top of some of our residences. So do we have that? Have we been effectively keeping those excessive structures on top?
Mayor and council members, we believe we've been implementing the amendments to Section 3018, which the council adopted, and we also believe that this complies with those new regulations.
Okay. Well, it might not be the design I would pick. It does match with several in the neighborhood, and it fits within the appropriate zoning.
In looking at the staff report, this meets all the city's development requirements at this point, does it not?
Honorable Mayor Weiss, correct. It does.
And it looks like there's canopy trees out front. So Joan Bachman would be happy, I take it.
Mayor, the landscape plans that you review are always conceptual because the final building plans may dictate other requirements. Our talented landscape architect will take a look at those.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Motion approved, 4-1. Sanchez, no.
We'll go to item 19, which is adoption of a resolution and neg deck for the Sandpiper Villa project, and we will open the public hearing and start with disclosures.
I've had contact from the churches as well as a few of the neighbors. I think we received one letter just the other day, Monday maybe, and been by the site many times.
And the site and staff.
Staff, several residents, and I was by the site this afternoon.
I attended the community meeting that was held, spoke to residents, spoke to the developer, also staff when they were designing the idea of having some affordable units in this project. It was very creative. So I also spoke with staff.
Staff.
Mr. Madero?
Thank you, Mayor Weiss, members of the City Council. My name is Sergio Madera. I'm a principal planner with the Planning Division and the project manager for the item before you tonight. So tonight's staff is asking City Council to consider a project, to consider adoption of a resolution for a final mitigated negative declaration and mitigation monitoring and reporting program that's been prepared for the project, to introduce an ordinance for a zone amendment that would change the project site zoning from single-family residential to public, semi-public, and finally to adopt a resolution approving the development plan conditional use permit to allow the development and operation of a 94-bed assisted living facility. So a little bit of background about the project site. It's highlighted in red on the map and on the overhead. It has a general plan land use designation of single-family detached and a current zoning designation of single-family residential. Surrounding uses include single-family and multifamily residential residences to the north, single-family residences to the south, a religious institution to the east, and a religious institution and medium-density residential to the west. The project site is currently vacant. It was previously improved with 2 single-family residences that were raised in around 2008. The site's been vacant since that time. A little bit of background. The Planning Commission did consider a project or a different proposal back in 2018 for a convalescent facility. The Planning Commission denied that request, citing concerns associated with the commercial nature of a convalescent facility, traffic associated with the project. They were previously proposing a parcel map to subdivide it, and there was that approval of the convalescent facility would preclude the site from providing affordable housing. Since that time, revisions were made to the project to change the proposed use from a convalescent facility to an assisted living facility. A traffic study was prepared that confirmed that there would be no impacts to the surrounding circulation network. The proposal for a parcel map was eliminated, and the applicant worked with the Neighborhood Services Department to come up with an agreement that would provide 8 beds for low-income seniors. This council approved that agreement in April of last year. In January of this year, the Planning Commission reviewed the item before you tonight, the project before you tonight, and did vote 6-1 to recommend approval to the City Council. The Planning Commission did note that the applicant had made significant changes in working with staff to address the Planning Commission's concerns. So the zone amendment before you tonight would change the site's zoning from single-family residential to public, semi-public. The exhibit on the screen shows the existing zoning on the top part of the exhibit and the proposed zoning of public, semi-public on the lower part of the exhibit. One of the requirements that the findings that staff has to make in recommending approval of such a proposed amendment is that the The proposed zoning would be consistent with surrounding land uses as previously explained. The site is, there's 2 religious institutions on either side of it, so those are the institutional type uses. There's residential uses to the north and south. The proposed residential character of the assisted living facility is consistent with both the adjacent institutional uses and the surrounding residential uses. So here on the overhead now is a copy of the example of the site plan, which shows the development of 4 buildings, each approximately 15,000 square feet in area, that will house a total of 94 assisted living facility beds. There's a proposed singular driveway off of Dixie Street that leads to an internal circulation non-site parking. The site would be wholly developed and include the construction of approximately 700 feet of sidewalk, which currently doesn't exist. It includes approximately 110 feet of off-site improvements for that sidewalk. All overhead utilities would be undergrounded on the perimeter of the project site. In addition, there is an off-site parking lot that's on a leased parcel on the adjacent church property that was approved by the Planning Commission in 2018 that would be vested by approval of tonight's request. Before you are some colored elevations of the 4 buildings. Each building's been designed with a distinct architectural vernacular that's depicted on the screen. There's a craftsman style, there is a farmhouse style, a Tuscan style, and a Santa Barbara Mission style being proposed. Here are some perspectives that show what the site would look like from the interior of the project. Finally, the project as proposed conforms with the general plan that it's consistent with surrounding uses. It will provide additional housing opportunities for elderly persons living in the city and provide 8 additional beds on a long-term basis for low-income seniors. The project as designed conforms and it meets and exceeds all development standards as required by the zoning ordinance. With that, staff and the Planning Commission are recommending that the City Council approve the project as proposed. That concludes my presentation. The applicant is here should you have any questions of them or myself. Thank you.
Thank you. This would be the time for the applicant's presentation if they choose to make one.
Okay, so I'm just going to run through some renderings, and then I'll answer your questions if you have any. So this just shows some street scenes: Dixie Street, Grace Street, and one in the middle is Dixie Street. One of the things that we did is we wanted to make these look like residential houses, so they'd be more similar to the environment that our residents would be coming from. In other words, a residential house. One of the things that we wanted to do to differentiate our homes is many assisted livings are built like hotels. They're rather institutional. They're 3-story buildings surrounded by parking spaces. And I mean, if you looked at the design of a jail, it's actually not much different. So we're really paying attention to how this is going to feel for the residents in every aspect. It was very important to us that we're in as much of a residential neighborhood as possible, so people are residing in a residential area, not a commercial area. We'll have solar panels, of course. The same interior shots that Sergio showed you. Moore Street, this is the entrance here, and that's the corner of Grace and Dixie. One of the things I'd like to point out, and I think you're aware, but right now there's no sidewalks on Grace or Dixie. People are walking in the streets and it poses a safety hazard. So we feel the sidewalks, the additional street lighting will benefit the neighborhood quite a bit, as well as undergrounding the power lines. There we go. That was it.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
If there are any questions after the public, you have time for rebuttal.
Okay.
There's a public hearing. Do we have any public?
We have 2 speakers that submitted slips. As I call your name, please make your way to the podium and speak directly into the microphone. Our first speaker is Wilbert Kossel, to be followed by Clifford Chonko.
Mr. Mayor and members of the council, let me introduce myself a little, give my credentials. I am a member of Oceanside community. I've been here since 2011. I live just a couple blocks from this location on Cadillac Circle. I'm also a former planning commissioner in a small town in Northern California that grew to be a much larger town, Lincoln, California. So I have some understanding of how planning works, and I've done this before several times. Now you know my credentials. I want you to picture your neighborhood. And you've got your neighborhood, you've got homes around you where you live, and there's a couple of houses that are maybe a little more run down, and a developer comes in and buys those, and you're thinking, great, somebody's going to put some nice homes on these lots, and there'll be kids maybe, and some running around, and some good neighbors, and no businesses going in. Why would you say business is going in? Well, this is a business. So the developer comes to you and says, I got a great idea. I'm going to put this thing in here, and it's kind of like a church. It's right between 2 churches, except for the house that they forgot to mention directly to the west. And also, it's kind of like a hotel, actually, because it isn't like a church, which runs Sunday morning, a little quiet time, a little noisy time, with noisy people who wear ties and suits and sing. No, it has ambulances. It's a hotel. It's 24/7, and it's a lot of people moving in and out. By the way, the church next door, which is being so helpful for this, and participating and welcoming them, we forgot to mention they're being paid for their space and for their time. So support, when you call financial support anything besides financial support, then you're calling it something else. But it's still financial support. These are commercial buildings in an area where we are residents. Neighborhoods are for neighbors. Now, Jack Feller said something really smart a few minutes ago, and I wrote it down because I thought this was great. It makes a difference when someone puts a lot of thought in what they're building. When you're putting a lot of thought into what money you're going to make off of it is one thing, but what you're going to do for the development for that area is a different thing. Now, these buildings, although they say they're nice and set back, if you look at the churches around them, those churches have lots of space around them. These buildings don't have lots of space for us to not have to look around at them. They're very large buildings. Does that mean I ran out of time? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for your time. This is a neighborhood. This is a hotel.
Clifford Chonko.
Good evening, Mayor Weiss and the City Council. It's been a while since I've been in front of the City Council. I've been in Oceanside since 1982. I've lived on Dixie Street. That's why I couldn't recognize that street. That was in the rendering. If you drive through Dixie Street right now, you will have to slow down for incoming traffic because there are cars parked all the way along. Parking has been a problem. I brought it up with the city, and the neighborhood apartments use our street as a parking lot. So what does that create? It creates traffic. It creates, you can't take out your trash in front of your house, not counting the car alarms that come on in the middle of the night when a noisy car or motorcycle comes by, and that's just the parking. With a 24/7 facility, you will have deliveries. I don't know the person who's the developer, but I know he's not going to run that facility. I have a master's degree in health services management. I know how to run a rehab facility. And don't tell me there won't be visitors or deliveries or visiting times. Then you have your staff. Anyway, my point is, there are other problems in the neighborhood that we're fixing. We're not asking for your help. We pick up the trash. We talk to the neighbors. Right now, I have a succulent project with my other neighbor. I'm providing the succulents. But we do preserve our neighborhood. And right now, there'll be a commercial site right smack in the middle of the neighborhood. I'm not questioning the need for the facility. I'm just saying it in your neighborhood, you wouldn't allow it. I am 100% sure about that. If I were to tell you I'm going to build this big facility in your neighborhood, regardless of what those renderings show, and those renderings are not going to be like it was going to be built. It's just like the Hallmark development right down the street. If you saw the newspaper advertisement, you thought you were in a forest. And that's not Dixie. Anyway, it's always been us against them. My only concern is the them includes you now. Who speaks for the neighborhood? I mean, if it's not them, it'll be another developer coming, and then another. They somehow have a hard time grasping the concept of single-family home. What's so difficult about that? You don't have the degree. You don't need a degree to do that. And at the end, I just like to request that you deny the project. Consider it for what it is. It is a money-making project right in the middle of a residential neighborhood.
This is a public hearing. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak? Mr. Knott?
Mayor, council members, Jimmy Knott, 127 Sherry Lane. Before Marjorie Pierce retired, this last year here, she sat down with me and we discussed this. And the key word that came up was assisted living. And I gave that a lot of thought. It's assisted living not just for the people that would be there, but also for the community around there. I think one thing that could be added to this is that in a lot of developments, there is something called a good neighbor policy that is being established within most developments, whereas the developer and development mandates that any questions or issues have to be settled between the parties before it is taken to any legal or any council or city involvement, where it would be involving mediators that would settle the issue. I think this would be a perfect spot for that type of good neighbor policy to be instituted. The other issue is that there's a lot of senior assistance programs which are nearby. You know them well. And as being the former Senior Citizen of the Year, I can tell you that a lot of those services are well used. And I'm sure that the seniors will take advantage of those services. Then you have also the low income. I want to make sure that they're all Section 8 qualified, and that they're not outpriced so that the people can take and live there affordably. There's a few people I know here in Oceanside that need this type of assisted living. We have very few of those. And when you're having like an 8-year waiting list, you cringe your teeth. Thank you.
Are there any public? Seeing none, the applicant has time for rebuttal. No rebuttal? Then we'll close the public input portion of this. Councilmember Sanchez.
Thank you. I attended a community hearing on this. I believe it was in 2018. It was on site at the church. And so I had a chance to walk around, and I also had a chance to talk to the applicant and talk to the neighbors who showed up. And I did not go there with a preconception at all about whether or not this was the right fit for the community. I had been given to understand that other projects that had been proposed were not acceptable to the community, and that it has been several years in the making. So I actually, apparently, I didn't get a chance to meet you, Mr. Kossel or Mr. Charco. I don't know if you were there. I thought I recognized you, yes. And I stayed for the meeting, most of it, I think. I think I had to go to a different meeting as well. And I did not hear that many complaints about it. And I want to say I apologize. Perhaps I didn't hear you speak. But I walked away with a sense that this was something that had been worked out. I'm reading in the staff report that the Planning Commission also had a chance to review this and approved it on a 6-1, having been more or less satisfied that the concerns that had been raised were addressed. This is not the first time that this project is before us, because we actually had an item come before us regarding the 8 units. And I did raise the issue about, did we have enough time to notify the community that this item was before us? It was basically the issue of financing the 8 units. And nobody appeared at that hearing with any concerns. So I believe the vote was a 5-0 to go ahead and agree to the financing of those 8 units. So I have to say that I was going to compliment the applicant for going to the community and, addressing it and being made available, because that's what I saw. I saw a person, and I did speak to other people, and they seem to like this project. They're not here today. There's only 2 people here to speak to it. Well, Mr. Knott, I don't think you live in this neighborhood, but 2 neighbors of this. The concerns that I had at the time had more to do with the traffic, and the staff report addresses the issue of traffic, and that there will be less traffic due to the kind of project that this is. So I have to say that at this time, I am a little bit surprised at the comments today. This has been going on, and I did ask some hard questions. I do remember asking some hard questions. You're nodding yes, and I got responses back. I also worked with the staff, especially I wanted to, this was a novel concept. It's this idea of affordable assisted living units. I think it was something once, it was an idea that was thought of by staff. It's very creative. I don't think there's anything like that in the county, and there's hope that this could be done again and again, because there really is no affordable assisted living those 8 units, I'm sure, would be snatched up practically immediately. So I'm going to go ahead, and this is hard for me to hear these comments, but I do think it is a good project. I'm going to go ahead and move adoption of the ordinance, the local coastal program amendment.
No, she can move adoption.
And excuse me, there was some excuse me. I'm going to move, turn to the wrong page. That we introduce the ordinance and adopt the resolutions, and I believe this will overall be a good project. Having heard from other folks in the neighborhood, I'm hoping that the impacts that you're concerned about will actually not happen. Thank you.
Councilman Rodriguez.
I have some questions with respect to the $1.7 million that was lent on this project that had a built-in interest rate and terms that was negotiated at that council meeting on April 10th. And how my questions involve, number one, it's almost been a year, so that's like $100,000 in interest that we've made. When is it going to be paid back, and how is it secured against this project? What's the security instrument? Is it a note and deed of trust, and has that been recorded? And is there going to be terms of a subordination? Like, how's this going to work out, and when are we getting the money back?
Thank you, Councilmember Rodriguez. Angie Hannafin with the Neighborhood Services Department. I was not part of this original deal, but I do have some information I can share with you. It's the 8 of the rooms or the units would be subject to a long-term income and affordability covenants for at least 40 years. And the payback, the payback would begin within 5 years of the certificate of occupancy. And the note will bear simple interest at the rate of 3% per year. And I'm sorry, what other items would you like me to address?
Well, no, the interest rate came in at 3%, but at the council meeting, we made a motion to double the interest rate.
That's right.
Okay.
That's correct.
Got it. And then, so the interest doesn't start until the occupancy, or it starts now?
It's within 5 years of the certificate of occupancy,
Okay.
or at 5 years.
You did that? We might have to look that up. And then is there a payback period outlined in the note on that?
I do apologize. I'm not as familiar with this.
Maybe the developer can.
20 years. Brent, maybe you can take that one on.
You're fine? Okay.
I have the loan agreement here.
Yes, so I remember the meeting well.
Yeah.
And we did change the interest rate, and we changed the terms as well. So instead of an amortizing loan, it was interest only payments. So the payments were about the same. And then I'll speak briefly to the gap analysis. So the gap analysis was significant. It was over $3 million. It was $3.4 million. So as a developer, we're actually helping to subsidize the low-income housing. It's almost a 50-50 split between the city and ourselves in subsidizing those 8 units.
Do you happen to remember the payback period on the loaned money?
20 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. So it'll just, okay, I'll have to get a copy of that, but I appreciate it. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Feller.
Thank you. I think the city's oversight's going to make a difference, being somewhat a partner in this with the loan. I think there's a strength in that, that it will actually be what it says it's going to be, and assist those that it says it will. This type of care, assisted living, does this have a lot of parking need for the residents?
No. Honorable Mayor, Deputy Mayor Feller. So the zoning ordinance has a parking standard, a base parking standard for residential care facilities such as this. It's 1 space for every 3 beds, but it also has a caveat that says, and also as required by the conditional use permit. The staff was concerned that there wasn't enough parking with the base standard, so we did a parking analysis. We had a parking analysis prepared that showed that a change of shift that might lead to additional parking demands that couldn't be satisfied with the base standard. So the applicant is providing essentially twice as many parking spaces as the base standard would call for. So there's 53 parking spaces total provided between what's on site and what's on the adjacent property that's under long-term lease with the applicant and the church.
And essentially that is for the workers.
That's correct, Deputy Mayor.
Because when you're in assisted living, you're not generally driving. My mother's in that right now, and it would be a shock if she was driving. So, and to the neighborhood, Maricosta College is right over the back fence, as well as prior to that for a lot of years, Big Bear Market, and so it's not a quaint neighborhood. It is a quaint neighborhood. It's not, I would say, not as quiet as most people would like, especially down on the west end of Dixie. It's very busy down there. I think I did have a question about the time frame on this. How long is this going to take to get going? Yes, sir.
So assuming we have a positive vote tonight, we think we'll have working drawings in 60 to 90 days and a bidding process of another 60 days.
Okay.
We're expecting to break ground within 6 to 9 months.
Okay, very good. How many employees are there?
Full-time employees on the site will be around 80.
Okay. 80, but not all at the same time.
No, not at the same time. At peak occupancy and peak staffing levels, we would top out around 28. That would be the most.
Okay, very good. I second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Mr. Mullen.
This is introduction of an ordinance of the City of Oceanside amending the zoning designation for certain real property located at the northwest corner of Dixie Street and Gray Street from single-family residential RS to public, semi-public PS, Sandpiper Villa zone amendment.
Please vote.
Motion approved, 5-0.
Under item 21, do we have speakers?
We have 9 speakers.
Okay, we've been asked to take a short break, so we'll reconvene at 7:15. Go to item 21. Mr. City Clerk, we have speakers?
We have 9 speakers on items off the agenda, item number 21. As I call your name, please make your way to the podium and speak directly into the microphone, and you can move the microphone around as well. Our first speaker is Ken Layton, to be followed by Jimmy Knott, to be followed by Shelley Parker.
Ken Layton, South O, speaking only for myself. Congratulations to City Clerk Zeb Navarro, he manages the only radio station in Oceanside, which was just named Community College Station of the Year. So congratulations, sir. Since we spoke 2 weeks ago, even more Oceanside seniors and retired veterans on fixed incomes are being tossed into homelessness. Just this week, 3 new mobile home sales were being blocked by park owners who knew they will eventually take over these homes and then rent them out for 4 times the rent. These 3 add to the dozens of cases of already blocked sales over the last 2 years. At Laguna Vista and Rancho San Luis Rey, homeowners are forced to pay for were forced to pay for tree removal they had no legal responsibility to pay for. When they don't pay, they get an unlawful detainer and they're out. One man in Mission View West had his house burned down. He was told he could bring in a new home, and then after paying space rent for months, he is now told he can't bring in the new home. In all these cases, there is no one to stand up for them. What we do have is pandering city council members who misrepresent and mislead these terrified people with false hopes and promises. Consider Chris Rodriguez, who promised mobile homeowners in District 2 he would stand up for them. 2 months after he took office, he took a big cash contribution from predatory park owner Steve Epstein. Mr. Rodriguez claims, whoopsie, I didn't know it was Epstein. When busted, he returned the money. This has a strong stench. And then there's Esther Sanchez, who shows up at mobile home parks every election cycle as their knight in shining armor. Last council meeting, Esther, you said you didn't take money from Gizmal, the scamming group that collects dues but does nothing to help mobile homeowners defend themselves. But any idiot with a computer like myself can see that, dadgum, you did take $1,000 from Gizmal in 2016. You lied to us on the dais 2 weeks ago. Local attorney Tim Tatro, who really does help these people who are struggling to survive, told me today that Gizmal does nothing but put out a magazine. And when it comes to actual legal relief, he says Gizmal does absolutely nothing as far as he can tell. Yet, Esther, you keep endorsing and promoting Gizmal, a group that declared in its last financial statement it is $16,000 upside down. 2 weeks ago, Esther, you indicated you yourself are going to put on your attorney Wonder Woman outfit and swoop down and help save these people. Only problem is, A, you have no clue about this kind of law. B, you've never done this kind of pro bono work as far as anyone can tell. And C, your campaign statements show that you have done no legal practice in the last decade.
Please wrap it up.
Thanks for the thought.
Thank you.
Mayor, council members, Jimmy Knott, 127 Sherry Lane. Following our nation's goal of basically environmental justice for all, and our state's law, the human right to safe, clean, affordable, and accessible drinking water, my concerns I've raised in the past are basically two of them. And I brought them to you, and you have directed our staff to report back to you on, 1, low income rate possibilities, and 2, regarding water shutoff protection. Well, to give you some information, first off, if I can have the overhead, thank you. The state has taken and addressed this. And, well, the state has said basically that the shutoff problem needs to be addressed. And what they've done is put in certain laws that said, hold your horses. You can't shut off their people's water, especially if they're low income, elderly, or have health issues. This is something I don't know if you've had reported back to you. I also brought the issue to you about low-income water rates. Again, the state has addressed this. And again, what they said is that there are issues that may come up because of a couple of other state laws, but there are other creative methods that can be used to go forward. There are reports upon reports and ideas upon ideas. Our staff has basically said, when I brought this to the director of the department, Carrie Dale, when I said, let's have our Utilities Commission look at these, she said, quote, The role of the Utilities Commission is to advise the City Council on matters under consideration. Review of legislation does not fit within their advisory role. So the base, Carrie says, is basically in your lap. Therefore, the answer has to come from you. Therefore, I want to ask you to pick this up and address this. And I want to take, and since it's been thrown back in your lap, I want to see you address the low-income rates and the shutoffs and make policy to address them ASAP. There's a couple of other things I wanted to address, but due to an earlier issue, but I was prevented from speaking by the mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Knott.
Shelley Parker, to be followed by Robert M., to be followed by Suzanne Hume.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council. My name is Shelley Parker. I have lived in Oceanside in Rancho San Luis Rey for the last 4 years. I moved from Northern California from another mobile home park, non-rent stabilized environment. So I am actually here not to ask you for any money. I want to speak in rebuttal to, unfortunately, Mr. Layton, who has left the building, and refute some of the statements that he made last meeting and this meeting. And I feel like I am uniquely qualified to actually speak about it because I am the state treasurer for Gizmo and have been for the last 2 years, and am standing in non-challenged re-election for the next 4. Now, the fact that he believes that Gizmo does nothing, one of our biggest bills was passed last year, AB 3066, which will level the playing field for mobile home owners to not have to spend their life savings to fight against a predatory park owner. I have the Californian magazine, which he stated was the only thing we did. There is financial information in it because I provided it, and we are not $16,000 upside down. I will not say that we have never been upside down, but we do not spend any money that we do not have. And we are working very hard to make sure that the predatory park owners that have come into Oceanside understand that Gizmo is out educating all of the mobile home owners as to their rights and their the ability to be able to fight against this. So he is right. The City Council could be doing more to actually protect the vulnerable seniors, low-income people who actually reside in these parks. It is an affordable housing that the city does not have to spend one dime on. And since our park was sold, the increase in tax revenue that John Saunders is paying went from $225,000 a year to what is going to be charged on $33 million. So our mobile home park should be saved and the people in them protected so that we are not seniors that are put out on the street because we have been financially ruined. Thank you.
Honorable Mayor, Honorable City Council members, Robert Markley, 200 North El Camino Real. California has the best mobile home owner protections of any state in the union. This is due mainly to the tireless work of GSMOL at the state level. Since 1962, they've been in continuous operation representing mobile homeowners in Sacramento.
GSM Oil is the only statewide organization of mobile homeowners in the state, and it's an all-volunteer organization, except for one part-time clerical worker in the office. Everybody is a volunteer. Nobody gets paid anything. It's the only mobile home organization with a paid lobbyist that represents all mobile homeowners in California. And at $25 a year in dues, it's low-cost insurance that mobile homeowners' interests will be represented in Sacramento. At the February 26th City Council meeting, there were numerous false statements made. First one was, GSM Oil has long since been taken over by park owners. Well, let's have some names. Who in GSM Oil has been taken over? No comment here. Which park owners have taken over? I want to hear some names. The statement was made that GSM Oil was suspended for doing business for a couple of years by the state of California. It's 100% false. GSM Oil has never been suspended by the state. Statement was made, we don't even issue financial reports. Another 100% false statement. You just saw one. And the GSM Oil also files financial reports every year, including 990 forms, which are public information. Anybody can get on the internet and find them. They said we were lobbying against rent protection. Well, AB 1482 is a statewide rent control law, and it's weaker than the mobile home rent control ordinance in Oceanside. If that would have been passed as it was originally written, it would have probably superseded Oceanside's rent control ordinance being a state law. But GSM Oil stopped that because our most jurisdictions that have rent control on mobile homes are much stiffer than what AB 1482 was. So we're better off not having it. Referring to the February 26 claims, I have turned those over to GSM Oil's corporate attorney for a possible slander lawsuit.
Please wrap it up, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Suzanne Hume, Clean Earth for Kids. I'd like to first say I'm really excited that the IPM passed. The language must be tightened up to protect our kids and residents. In speaking with staff, hopefully that will happen and we can get everyone on board to make sure this happens and it goes forward. Of course, we're disappointed that option one wasn't selected because we're worried that if there are weeds, that people will complain, and then, are these toxic pesticides going to be brought back? Anyway, so I would like to talk about the importance of our beautiful parks and keeping them as they are. And tonight, you didn't have an opportunity to hear about the $10,000 per field grant available through non-toxic neighborhoods to ensure safe and healthy playing fields. We have been meeting with people from all over the country, and we will continue to apply for grants, along with, in addition to non-toxic neighborhoods that we're here tonight with Bob Johnson. Those fields are played on 7 days a week because when the pesticides aren't used and there's healthy microbes, the soil absorbs more water. So watering is 1 day a week and twice in the summer. So we absolutely oppose a toxic synthetic turf being put in. I'm assuming that because of the shortage of money that you're going to cancel that agenda item for next week because if there's not money for the, to help protect kids, then certainly not $14 million for 2 parks of synthetic turf. Also, I'm very concerned about the synthetic turf for baseball fields, and especially, you certainly don't want to put your name on that. When our players slide into home and they're getting those turf burns, they're going to remember who made that happen. And so we know that there's many toxic chemicals inside, and that there is really no disposal for that. So we have, again, consulted with the brightest people from all over the country, including NIH. Anyway, we know that the information from Carlsbad was not correct when they said a toxicologist signed off. Plus, that's old info, that's old news, and the EPA walked back the safety of that. So there's absolutely no way you want to have your name on that. I don't have time to show the video I was going to show you from Harvard talking about synthetic turf and how it is toxic, or how people that use bio-based and Quirk have to water it 48 hours continuously because it becomes very hard, or how the coconut floats away and how other additives are added and it's just unsafe. Synthetic turf is big business, so somebody's making a lot of money here, and hopefully it isn't these companies that want to come in. What we'd rather do is use soil testing, not have pesticides. Thank you so much. Actually, or just say what you were going to say first.
I just wanted to second that we were at the Parks and Rec Commission talking about $1 to $2 million per field for synthetic turf. And certainly with the budget situation, I would highly recommend that instead of having an agenda item for the 25th, that you just shelve the entire project. And I'm going to play this video for you.
My research work focuses around exposures to children. And the work that I've done has examined how inhalation exposures occur on turf fields. And it's the thing that people think about crumb rubber as these large particles. Gee, kids can't breathe in that. The problem is these particles break down over time, and you get ultrafine particles, particles that are inhalable and respirable. The distinction is respirable are ones that get deep down the lung, and that's sort of a problem in terms of the respiratory tract. But even larger particles can be inhaled and wind up getting trapped in the upper airways, but you swallow them and they go down through the GI tract, and if there are chemicals there, either metals such as lead, they get absorbed by the body, or if they're organic compounds, they can easily be absorbed through the gut. And so there are multiple routes of exposure to children from any of these compounds. Now, I guess one of the things that's important to understand is there's a cloud that develops on a field where children are playing. Even if one child is there, and we did some testing to validate this, there is, I talk about the pigpen effect, the character from Peanuts, Pigpen, has this visible cloud. Well, it turns out children have an invisible cloud around them. This microenvironment is a result of stirring up dust or particulate on the turf fields. And then more recent work, which we just published within the last few months, shows that some of this material deposits on their clothing and then again gets resuspended again into their breathing zone. This casual sampling of the field massively underestimates the potential dose that a child could receive while playing on these surfaces. And these small particles, many of which, the majority of which from the crumb rubber, are carbon black. Anything that these carbon particles were exposed to in the manufacture of a tire or in their life gets absorbed out of these particles, and they can then get inhaled, and particularly when the larger particles wind up going through the GI tract, the gastric juices will release them, and it makes it highly likely that the material will be bioavailable and absorbed by a child. I think if a comprehensive study isn't mounted within the next 5 years.
Our next speaker is Darren Marlowe, to be followed by Aaron Kinsberg, to be followed by Kellen Sue.
Hi again. Please do not allow synthetic turf to replace the natural grass fields we already have in Oceanside. One drawback from synthetic turf is the cost. Synthetic turf fields cost between $1 and $2 million, racking up a $14 million bill for the city, and that does not account for the large sum of money required to maintain and continuously clean the field once installed. When Oceanside applies for grants, certainly they can apply to upgrade the natural grass, build equipment, play structures, install benches, and more, all for less cost than one field of synthetic turf. Secondly, synthetic turf, contains toxic chemicals that can seriously harm one's health, especially children and students who are the ones that would be using the fields continuously. For example, PFAs, a type of compound used in synthetic turf, are linked to high cholesterol, thyroid disease, decreased fertility and pregnancy-induced hypertension, decreased vaccine response, and ulcerative colitis, and ADHD. Latex is also found in synthetic turf and can cause horrible reactions for people with serious allergies to it. Additionally, the crumb rubber, used to provide a cushion for players on the field, contains at least 5 known carcinogens: cadmium, benzene, nickel, chromium, and arsenic, according to the EPA. In fact, Amy Griffin, an assistant soccer coach at the University of Washington, has found that 13 of her players have developed rare forms of cancer during their careers on the university's synthetic turf field. I asked the City of Oceanside to prevent the use of synthetic turf for contact sports and leisure activities where your residents would be potentially exposed to these toxins. Thank you.
Hi again. Just to follow up on my peers at Cleaners for Kids, just like to paint a picture. I've been growing up in youth sports in this age of synthetic turf, and it's become more of a reality that every natural playing field has become and has turned into synthetic turf for its efficiency, or for proclaimed ideas that it is more efficient. But I've seen, and studies have shown, more disproportionate cancer found in soccer players and football players that have been playing on synthetic turf fields. For instance, I've seen more people my age, 22 to 24, develop leukemia and lymphomas that are actually caused by carcinogenic agents that are found in these synthetic turf fields. That being said, like hydrocarbons, which are actually a pretty key component to the organic compounds found in crumb rubber, which is also a pretty essential compound in crude oil, natural gas, and coal. That being said, I don't think it's necessarily the greatest idea to be having children and our future being subjected to playing on these fields that are filled with these carcinogenic agents. I believe there are alternative methods, and I don't think it's worth sacrificing the safety of children. Thank you so much.
Good evening. My name is Kellen Sue, and I am the chair of the Parks and Rec Committee. I regretfully was too late to speak earlier, but I wanted to take the time now to introduce myself. Our Parks and Rec Committee is a group of passionate, intelligent, balanced, and experienced residents who are committed to serving the city well by ensuring excellence in the Parks and Rec programs. We have several items that are going on in the Parks and Rec Committee, so you guys will be interacting with us often, and we look forward to working with all of you. My hope is that the vote earlier is not an indication of the council's values, priorities, or how valued the work of the Parks and Rec Committee is. There was an ad hoc committee who spent tremendous amount of hours putting forth the IPM that you guys hopefully read through. I believe the parks to be a main interface between the city and the public, an immense asset for residents having a positive interaction with the city. These are services that are utilized in not in a time of distress, but leisure. I'm committed to loving my neighbor well by helping the parks thrive, by meeting felt and real needs, and by advocating for the residents who share their concerns in our meetings. I look forward to working with you all, and I hope we can work to provide excellence in to Oceanside residents in the Parks and Rec Division. Thank you, guys.
That concludes our speakers.
With that, we'll go to item 22, which is a request by Deputy Mayor Feller and Councilmember Rodriguez to discuss direction to staff regarding police staffing.
Is that me? Simply, I'm going to just request that we try to move this forward to in giving staff direction to work on developing police staffing metrics around the per 1,000 population to be applied to new development and incorporated into the community facilities element update that is currently underway. And it's really just an item for discussion at this point.
Do we have speakers?
We have no speakers.
Good.
Yes, I supported Deputy Mayor Feller in bringing forth this item. I know staff's in the middle of working on the community facilities element, and we're at a point in time as we prepare for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years in our city. We're pretty built out, and we need to ensure that future developments are mitigating appropriately for public safety, in particular our police department. And so I think this is appropriate time just to give staff direction on developing this matrix. You have the police, you have the support staff for the police, then you also have police infrastructure and hard assets. And so I'm just going to leave that on the leadership of the city manager's office to put together some sort of metric that can be followed as a guideline to adequately mitigate in the future for future developments that can offset those impacts on public safety.
Councilmember Sanchez.
Thank you. And I'm going to support this, but I already know that staff has been working on this. I think that as early as last August or September, this is something that then City Manager Michelle Lawrence talked to us each about, and that it was going to be part of going forward. So I'm not sure why it's on as a council item, because I know, and I did get a chance to ask Deanna if staff was already working on this, and she said yes, as part of our work going forward. So if this is just to underline that this is something that we ought to be looking at and encourage staff to continue on its course, I'm fine with that. But this is an idea that staff had already come up with and was already working on. So either, I don't know, maybe Deanna, you had a chance to bring this forward or what, but I know that this was already something that we all said, yes, this is a good idea, because we are falling behind. Residential does not pay for all the expenses, especially public safety, and we probably should be looking at fire as well, not just police. So bottom line is it's about public safety and being able to provide services. What we need are jobs. We need to have a better economic mix, and not just residential, because residential is going to kill us in the end. We're not going to be able to support having our own public safety. So this idea, but along with ensuring that we have a balanced economy, is what we ought to be going forward on. Thank you.
Councilmember Keim.
So I'm going to support this. I think that this number that we're going to want going forward isn't going to mean a lot if we can't fill the spots like we already have right now. Deanna, how many officers are we down? Just a rough guess, between 10 and 20, correct?
15.
That'd be accurate? So I'd like to make a motion to go forward with this, but I'd like to include some recruitment and retention efforts so we can look at possibly getting more laterals on board, maybe one-time monies from Measure X so we can fill the spots that we already have, because otherwise it's just our gap's gonna get bigger. And a lot of these priorities that the community has are predicated on us having the officers to take care of it. And right now that's a challenge. I know overtime hasn't been able to get filled on some of our crime suppression. So a lot of these quality of life issues that we're trying to deal with, we don't have the staffing. So I think that, and that Measure X, the one-time money for public safety, could be a valuable asset used with recruiting and retention.
think the Measure X, we can direct the city manager, but that's not kind of what the way this is written on the agenda.
Okay.
So I guess my comment would be is I'm okay with moving forward to look at some metric to apply to new development, but if we wait for the community's facilities element of the general plan to be done, we'll be here 3 years from now and not have it finished. So if we're going to look at identifying some metric to apply to new development, I think it can be included in the future update, but I think we would need to have that come back before us sooner than waiting that 3-year period, so that as new development comes in, we can impose that on them as a condition of development. So I'm supportive of it.
Well, that's
if we
what I thought
advance
was
it.
going to come forward
Mayor.
before.
Deputy Mayor Feller.
Thank you. I would, I think that's a great addition to what we need to look at is the filling the vacant spots. There's, you know, everybody's probably short, so I think that's, you know, part of what we have going, and so I support that motion.
Well, I think there's general direction to the city manager, and I think what kind of time frame do you think you could bring something back other than waiting for the?
Mayor and council members, certainly this will be a priority that we will move forward more quickly than the element. It would just be incorporated into the element as that comes forward. But we do need metrics in place in order to move forward with the Community Facilities District for Public Safety. So it is a priority item that we have initiated and will continue to prioritize.
I just want to say we have not discussed this openly about metrics for this in anywhere in the past.
No, it's supposed to come to us.
Yeah, I agree with that, Deputy Mayor. I think the biggest point we want to make here is when a developer comes to the city of Oceanside and they're required to show a financial analysis and mitigations, there's not a nexus that the city has established that ties them on mitigation measures. For example, fire, they have a memorandum of understanding that says 5-minute call times or less. So, you know, fire can say, hey, we agree with these mitigations. Staff can say, we agree with these mitigations to accommodate this nexus. Whereas with police, we don't have that for infrastructure or police officers. It's more of a, you know, state down, you know, CEQA on down. And so we have a lot of developments that have passed and it's not adequately mitigating for our police department, whereas our fire department has those nexuses established. So I think the direction we wanted to go with is, you know, something sooner than later that we can establish that would, in essence, make development pay their fair share for police and police infrastructure in the near future, and not necessarily but is that 2 cops per 1,000? Is that a call time? You know, that's kind of what we're looking for staff to develop, you know, to get creative on that.
Councilmember Sanchez.
Thank you. And again, I want to emphasize that it should be for both public safety. That's what we had been talking about with through staff, and that's correct. We haven't had a public hearing on this because it's only been through staff and with staff saying that it was going to be bringing it forward, and it was always considered as public safety. We can't just have this. Response times were for all public safety, not just for fire, and that's a council policy. It's not something that was within some kind of say negotiated contract with our employees. This is something that we made a commitment to our residents because we had actually 10, 15-minute response times, and we needed to reduce it. So what's going to reduce it, of course, is going to be having to invest in new police stations, fire stations, more trucks. You know, obviously, we're not set up for the worst case scenario day. We're set up for being able to drop our borders and be able to have other jurisdictions respond, especially if they're closer or that station or that officer is off doing something else. So yes, I look forward to the report from public safety and from staff into seeing how we can improve. Of course, there are certain things that we'll also have to look at, and those are salaries, which obviously is a big factor in attracting more police officers or more firefighters. So it'll be an interesting study. Thank you.
Councilman Rodriguez.
Just point of order, it is not a council policy to have a 5-minute or less call time. That is a memorandum of understanding between Oceanside and fire. And there is no nexus for police. That's what we need to create in the short term and in the long term so that developers, not the general fund, can mitigate for public safety measures, period.
So I'm glad this is on the
Disagree
agenda
with
the way
that
it was. And I would just, with what we have, I think the city manager has some direction. I would just ask if the city manager could provide like a monthly update on what the process is and when we will get something back formally. So I don't know if we need a motion. If we can just get like we get the weekly update
That
once a month,
direction.
we just get an update and we'll see where it is. And if we need to advance something beyond that, we can.
Well, I would actually like to make a motion on this.
Okay.
Do you think 120 days is a good enough time for an update on this?
Councilmember Rodriguez, we're very willing to provide monthly updates. I don't know that we can complete it in 120 days, but we will strive to prioritize this and get it done as quickly as possible, including providing monthly milestones.
Okay. Because otherwise, we're in the same position we are before this council again.
Well, I think if we get the monthly updates, we can make a determination if it's dragging on too long to advance it.
So then, at what point would it, so staff, I guess I'm saying, is this something that's going to come back that we're going to move for on the future council agenda?
Yeah, we're going to have to.
Staff's gonna bring it up
Staff will bring an item forward to you.
within 6 months?
Certainly, I think we could get it done in 6 months or less. Yeah.
Make a motion to have it back within 6 months?
Sure. Go ahead.
Make a motion
We have a motion on the floor already.
back, some sort of language.
There was a motion on the floor.
Ideas on a staffing matrix for police,
Motion.
and we'll go from there.
I'll pull mine.
So we have a motion that's already been seconded, so unless you want to withdraw that motion. then-
Okay.
Who was? Okay, so now it's,
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Motion approved, 5-0.
23.
Item 23 is the adoption of an ordinance of the City of Oceanside amending Articles 4A and 12 of the City Downtown Zoning Ordinance to enable streamlining the review process for certain types of uses by administrative review and allowing certain non-controversial uses by right and establishing the amended text as part of the implementing document of the local coastal program.
Councilmember Sanchez,
Move adoption?
Second.
please vote.
Approved, 5-0.
Mr. Mullen, closed session report.
Thank you. The council met at 3:30 in closed session to discuss the conference with labor negotiator involving the status of negotiations with the Oceanside Firefighters Association and the Oceanside Fire Management Association. There is no action to report under the Brown Act under that item. There were no other items discussed in closed session today.
Do we have any general council member comments? Seeing no lights, we will adjourn to a workshop on 2 o'clock Wednesday, March 18th regarding homelessness. We're adjourned.
Happy birthday, Rena.